Power of Four. Shift your perspective to change your life.
Hello, welcome everybody. My name is Jenny Capella. Welcome to the Power of Four. And today I'm very excited to have a guest with me, Dr. Ave Anthony from Olyfamily Chiropractic. And before I introduce him formally to you, I want to give you a little bit of background about myself with chiropractic care. When I was 19 years old, I went to my very first visit and I found immediate relief. It was actually quite amazing to me. Over the years, I've been to various chiropractors. They've had different techniques, etc. But I'm a firm believer in chiropractic, whether I've had an auto accident, fallen on the ice. Yes, I've had both of those happen, unfortunately, multiple times. But in either case, whatever happens, I would go to a chiropractor to make sure that I was in alignment so that the healing could occur that my body wanted to do for me, but couldn't do when I was kinked up, if you will. Make sure that that flow was happening. So fast forward to about a year and a half ago, I was very blessed to find on Facebook a post by Olyfamily Chiropractic, and they were advertising a form of care that I'd been craving for a long time, which was a more gentle approach, Atlas focused, which Ari will talk to you about in just a little bit. And since I've been going to them, the biggest thing that's happened to me is a stabilization in the area of my pelvis. It used to kind of sometimes tilt a little or maybe go off, and I feel like, oh my gosh, my lower back, it's going to hurt again, it's going to go out. But now I start getting a little twinge of it, and I think, I'm going to have to go back in, and all of a sudden it just resolves itself. It's really incredible. I've always wanted that. So anyway, with that, I would like to officially welcome you. Thank you for being here, Dr. Ari, and love to have you.
So excited to be here.
Yeah, and I'd love to have you just tell us a little bit about your background. I know you've been involved with chiropractic from a very young age. So,
Oh yeah. Yeah, I received my first adjustment from my dad, who's a chiropractor, right after I was born. So, I've pretty much been under care since minute zero, and even before that, probably in the womb. I don't know how that works, but it does. And so I grew up with it my entire life, and I decided to become a chiropractor and open up a practice with my wife. And we moved up to Olympia, Washington. Been in practice for about 7 years now, and every moment's been amazing as far as the chiropractic goes and the business of chiropractic. Everything has its ups and downs, but the service of the people is the most important thing to me, and being able to do that to the best of my ability is something that I continue to strive to do better.
yeah. Well, and because you know so much about chiropractic, I'd love to hear specifically about what guided you or led you eventually to get into this form where you're really focused on the Atlas. And in particular, I was just in your center the other day talking to Dr. Steve, and I said, he was talking about the Atlas being foundational, to the health or to the body. And I was thinking, really, because my thought and the way I was trained was that, your hips were, or your pelvis, or even your feet. But when I thought about that, it kind of reversed my thinking. So I'd love to hear about that and just about the techniques you use, et cetera.
Yeah. So, I mean, everybody knows that the brain is running the show, right? It's coordinating everything in the body. And the reason that the brain is capable of doing that is because of this intelligence that runs the body. And really, we don't know much about where this intelligence comes from, but it is what allows us to digest our food and beats our heart and turns McDonald's into eye cells, right? And that's an amazing capability that nobody's been able to replicate anywhere in the lab or out of the lab. So when this power is running through the body, what chiropractic discovered over 120 years ago was that there can be interference to the way that that transmission of life flows from the brain to the body. And because it just so happens that the densest amount of neurological tissue is right here at the atlas, right at the brainstem, because that's what the atlas protects, that it can cause that interference to occur as a choke point. So everything going from above down and from bottom up can be compromised because of interference in that area. So this is called upper cervical chiropractic because this is the top bone in the spine, the upper cervical area. And when we work with that area, it's so simple. It's just like unkinking a hose. When the hose is kinked, water doesn't get through. And when you unkink it, water flows through. And that same analogy works for the atlas and the brainstem, because the spinal cord, as it goes up to the brain, it's really just a big tube and it's a big hose. So when we find that area is compromised and we make a adjustment to that area, it allows life to start to normalize, because ultimately the body knows what to do. Like I said, it knows how to beat the heart and digest your food. And every single complicated function happens automatically in the body. So we have a saying in chiropractic, the body needs no help. It just needs no interference.
Mm.
And so when we allow that interference to subside, a sense of normalcy just starts to return to the body. And when we keep that happening over a person's entire lifetime, when there's less interference to that intelligence doing its job, you just happen to get healthier people. And that's usually where people start to begin chiropractic care and begin their experience is something happens to them. They feel hurt, they come into the office, but that isn't the way that it's always been within chiropractic. In fact, that's really only the last maybe 40, 50 years of chiropractic. I mean, before that, before insurance companies got involved with chiropractic, people would go for all different kinds of reasons. And mostly because they realized that, I mean, granted, medicine was in a different state, chiropractic was in a different
Mm.
state. It was a different world, right? 60 years ago with the technology and the understanding that we have now. It's so advanced compared to, back then. But people would go for all different kinds of reasons. And one of them really was to make sure that the body was doing its job. And when the body's doing its job, less things occur, less things go wrong. And that's really, my attitude around chiropractic is making sure that the body is capable of doing its job, because when its power is on, I mean, what's the limit, right? I mean, your body's capable of doing so much and healing so much.
And listening to you now, it reminds me of all the myths, like what you were saying about, hey, we've come a long way since then. What are some of the common myths that you hear about chiropractic, just to help our audience today, whoever's listening, to understand, what they might have heard versus what it actually is?
Yeah, I mean, everything comes down to just a lack of education, and that's one reason why I put so much emphasis on the re-education of anybody who comes into our office, because otherwise we're really depriving ourselves of the opportunity that is chiropractic care and taking care of our body. I mean, some of the myths, I mean, I hear them daily, gosh, chiropractic is for low back pain and headaches, right? It's for treating symptoms. It's
Mm.
if you go once, you always have to go. You can't stop going. There's a litany of just the I can't come up with any more right now.
That's fine.
Um,
That's totally, I mean, that covers a lot of it right there. And I mean, I remember hearing that one before too from various people about, hey, you get hooked, you're just going to have to keep coming forever. But I know that the goal for you all is for people to get into a point where they're just constantly having that flow. And, then it becomes, okay, life happens, we have a stress point, and we come in to get it, adjusted. I mean, it's like taking your car for an oil change or something, right? That it just becomes more natural that way. And, I'd really love to hear actually now about your focus at your clinic on children and babies. People might not understand that you actually can do it pretty much out of the womb, if you will. And tell me about that for a part of your practice.
Yeah, so I mean, the basic foundational understanding of chiropractic really needs to be explained to understand, why would I bring a kid in? Why would I have my baby adjusted? Because they don't have, maybe they're seemingly healthy, right? They come out, they start to grow, they're this tiny thing. You don't know if they're in pain or not. So why would I bring them to a chiropractor? And that's really, one of the most common things that we hear seeing so many kids in our practice. So to understand really what's happening when we make an adjustment to a baby, the nervous system is the first system to develop in mom. Okay. It's the spinal cord that starts to grow, and that's the very first system. And it turns into the brain. The brain starts to protect itself with bone. And then the spinal cord starts to protect itself with the spine. And so really, we use the spine as a vehicle to influence the nervous system and to remove interference to the nervous system. And so really some people will be saying, well, what does that even really mean? What is interference to the nervous system? Can I see it? Can I touch it? And that's been the biggest problem with chiropractic, in my opinion, is people's ability to explain why we do what we do, because there really isn't anything tangible because it's inside the human body that we're dealing with, right? So when we make an adjustment, what's happening and why would that need to be happening for a baby?
Mm.
Well, the bones, they can move out of alignment. And when the bones move out of alignment, they can put pressure onto the spinal cord and to the brainstem. And so as a chiropractor, what we're trained to do is to detect that. And the reason that we detect that is because when there's compression, just like we were talking about before, on that hose, water doesn't flow either way. And so the body, it's not going to be able to function like it's designed to. And so when we correct that vertebra, put it back into position, that unkinks the hose, allows life to flow, allows the nervous system to regulate itself once again. And if we can do that for a person over their entire life, whenever it comes out of alignment, we put it back into alignment, take the pressure off of the nervous system, the body's capable of regulating like it should. Because let's think about this. Let's say that baby comes out of mom and there is no problem with the nervous system. Okay. That baby is totally healthy. The spine's aligned. Everything's doing great. And as the baby starts to grow up, they learn to crawl, they learn to walk. I mean, I have a 1-year-old, she's fallen, 10 times probably in the last 3 hours, as she's learning to do her thing and to get up and move around the world. Stress is involved in the developmental process. So when my baby falls and that puts stress onto the neurology because now something's moved out of alignment, if it's allowed to stay out of alignment, is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's not a good thing. How much pressure is it exerting on the nervous system? I don't know until we check. If it's a minimal amount, maybe you don't see any symptoms. So she does that again the next day and the next day and the next day. And now she's 10 years old and she's never seen a chiropractor. And she has this accumulation of stress in the neurology that has adapted. Obviously, the body's, worked around it, but everybody has an ability to heal. And if we could put a percentage on your ability to heal, let's say that 100% is perfect, okay? And because the nervous system has been under stress throughout life and we haven't been able to work and correct that interference. Now, let's say you've diminished your capability to heal down to 60% of normal and you're living at 60%. Is there symptoms that are going to be expressed by the body? Maybe not. And this is why I tell people, I'm all for helping people get out of pain because it sucks living with pain. But that's just the tip of the iceberg, because ultimately, if the body is not healing like it was designed to heal, that's a big problem because you're always going to be chasing symptoms. And then the moment you get out of pain or out of symptoms, does that mean that you're healing at 100% again? No, absolutely not. So that's why, my clinic is focused around educating people on, can we understand at what percentage you're healing right now? And can we make improvements to that? Can we take you from, you're healing at 30% of normal, you've lost 70% of your total function. And can we restore that up to 70, 80, 90%? I don't know if we can get to 100%, because ultimately, we live and we die, and that's just being human. But just like exercise or just like nutrition or mindfulness, we can improve the way that our body works. And this is why I tell people that, I'm not against drugs and surgery. They have their place, but I really am for allowing your body to work the way that it was designed. And if we can accumulate that over months, your body will start to decrease the amount of symptoms it's expressing. If we can do that over years, we're going to start to optimize the way that you live. Your relationships will get better. Your sleep will get better. Your immune system will get better. Your hormones will get better. If we can do that over 10 years, over 20 years, over a lifetime, we're really maximizing the life that flows from above down in the body and is expressed inside out. Instead of having to do things from the outside in, like take drugs or cut things out of the body like surgery, we're maximizing the body's ability to work from the inside out. So that's why we see kids. That was a really long answer.
No, it was great.
That's essentially why we see kids.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We start them off young, and we don't want to waste any time. Just like with my daughter, I don't want her to spend any amount of time with her nervous system not regulating properly, which is why we check to make sure that it is. And consequently, just like, when you go to the gym and build muscle, that is a process that you can start to not like elongate, but it takes time to build muscle. And then once you've built the muscle, You don't have to focus as regularly and train as hard as you did to get it. You're just maintaining it. That's what I'm trying to say. You're just maintaining it. And so
Right.
the same thing with chiropractic care. Once you've gotten the nervous system to a level, say it's at 80% or 90% and it's working really well, then we don't have to do as much work because it's not under as much stress. It's like the engine in your car, if it's burning through oil and there's problems with the spark plugs and there's problems with, your catalytic converter and there's problems with the this and the this and the this, that car is going to be running really sluggish. And same with the body. If your liver is, stressed and it's not breaking down toxins properly, and your nervous system is not able to heal the liver because it's working at 50% of normal. And now because your liver's not breaking down toxins, those toxins, they interfere with your brain function. And now because your brain function goes down, that starts to interfere with your thyroid. So your metabolism goes down, and that interferes with your kidneys, and your kidneys' ability to filter out the proper nutrients goes down. And so we can start to have all of these problems occur simply because Houston control, which is the nervous system, is not running the show. And so when we improve that, it's not to get rid of the liver problem, the kidney problem, the thyroid problem, the brain problem. It's to make sure that the body's capable of healing like it should. And those other things, do they need to be addressed? Yes, I think so. Absolutely. Because you've let it slip so much that now there's problems with them. So, I tell people that getting your health back, chiropractic is not a cure-all. It is removing interference to the nervous system. The nervous system happens to heal the body, and it's the system responsible for healing the body. But just by taking care of that, it does not mean that everything else is going to start to go away. That's why it's so important to take care of your health and really maintain it, instead of just go until it breaks down and, your body isn't healing. And now you have these problems. And, a lot of people, they get trapped in this hamster wheel of health. And that's a crappy place to be. I don't wish that upon anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thank you so much. I really appreciate everything you just said. And I was just remembering in my head this picture. I think it was a video that you guys had on your website. I think it was with your baby, and she was Emma. She was over your shoulder, and your wife was adjusting her. I'd really love for you to just explain to people who might be concerned about, oh my gosh, a baby, like that sounds scary. Like how did you do that? Were you just sort of gently touching different spots that seemed out of alignment, or?
I have no idea which which one you're talking about, but
Oh,
like in
okay.
general, how we adjust her.
Yeah.
I mean, the pressure that we use to adjust a child is no more than checking the ripeness of a tomato. Okay. So it doesn't take much, especially, I mean, when they're so young, scar tissue hasn't built up. There isn't anything, they're so mobile at that age. There isn't anything keeping the bones from moving back into alignment, except for the body has learned to hold a pattern because the neurology is firing a certain way. And that's what starts to keep people in that holding pattern. Okay. So it's like if I learn to throw a ball a certain way with my right arm, and I just trained and trained and trained and trained and trained, I would get really good at throwing it that specific way. And then all of a sudden, a coach comes along and he's like, hey, like if you want to make it to the big leagues, you really got to change how you throw because you're going to blow out your shoulder. And I'm over here like, yeah, but like, you know how much effort I just put into training to throw this way? And you're telling me I have to redo that? Well, it's necessary if I want to reach my goals, right? So you have to change input in to get a better input out. And it's the same thing with kids. So the adjustment is really light, because once we find the area that's out of alignment, putting it back into alignment takes no more than just the pressure that you would take to check how ripe a tomato is, or to squeeze a marshmallow essentially. So I think with with my daughter, the biggest thing for her, just like you, just like me, is really keeping the atlas clear and the atlas in alignment. And the atlas is so important, and it's also such a small part of chiropractic, is analyzing the atlas specifically. And this is the part of my profession that I think we could do a better job at, which is educating on the atlas, educating on the neurology, educating on the importance of maintaining this area, not just for adults, but for kids. And when we do that, especially for, for my daughter, I mean, gosh, she's just like a different child. When it's out of alignment and there's problems with it, her personality changes, her sleep patterns change, her digestion changes. She poops less frequently. And so there's definite signs and symptoms that, the nervous system is not doing its job. And instead of waiting for those symptoms to come up, we try, and, we lead busy lives, so we don't always get to do this as much as we want to, but we try to just get her checked. And so there's a big difference between getting her adjusted and getting her checked. And the difference between that is, if I don't know what is out of alignment and I'm not checking to see what's out of alignment, that is exactly like going to the dentist and not checking to see if you have a cavity and just starting to fill teeth. It makes absolutely no sense. So if you're not getting checked to see what's in alignment and what's out of alignment, and you're just having an adjustment performed, how do you know that that's improving the body? How do you know that that's removing interference? Because once I make an adjustment, that bone that was out of alignment is now in alignment. And how long does it stay in alignment before it comes back out? And that's really been, the principle around which, we've created our office. Because if you never check, you never know. And I'm not going to be the, person who's just over here adjusting a lot of people, or I mean, I should say manipulating, because it's not really an adjustment unless you check. And that's, a very important terminology distinction that we should make. Because if we don't check, then really what we're doing is you can make anything pop in the body. I can crack any bone, but is that doing anything? That's the real question. That's what started me down this path of chiropractic and checking the atlas. Was I really wanted to make a difference in people's lives. I really wanted to make sure that the neurology was better able to express itself, because we have the greatest doctor within us. And I only have, how many years on this earth? Like, it's not a lot, like maybe I'll live to 80, 90, I don't know. But in that time period, I want to make a big impact in the people that I serve in their lives, because this is the greatest mission that I've come across that I can serve. And there's really, chiropractic is the only profession that can make an adjustment. There's lots of professions that manipulate the spine, that manipulate the joints and the vertebra and the, other joints in the body. But is that removing interference? And how do you know that it is? And that's why I think it's so important for kids, and why it's so important for adults, and why I continue to get better at it and to get better at educating people about it. Because if we don't, then who is, and what's the detriment to humanity if we don't provide the service? People are walking around with less life, and that's just not okay, because we're seeing the effects of that in our country.
Yeah.
And I mean, not to be like a downer and doomsday, but, we have never had a higher suicide rate in our country than right now. We've never had more anxiety and depression in kids that are so young. And you can blame all of these things, like social media. You can blame all of these things, and I see that those things have an effect. And I'm sure, as we continue to study them, all this technology is so new. Being in front of a screen for kids is so new, and I'm sure that changes them developmentally. I have no doubt about that, actually. But what I do know is that when the body is experiencing interference in its ability to run and regulate, that sucks. And that is going to change your chemicals. That is going to change your hormones. That is going to change your expression of life. Because when things are screwed up from the inside, you are going to get a screwed up outside. And that's really, why I do what I do, so that my daughter can grow up in a world that is better than when I found it. And we're able to allow me, starting with me, to have a healthier expression of life, so that I can provide that to you, so that you can tell your friends and family, hey, you need to be doing this because this is essential. And the more people that experience that shift, just the better world we have. And I mean, that's a world I want to live in,
Absolutely. And during this time that you've been speaking about, how do we know if we don't check? One of the things that I really appreciate about your center is that you do check not only just manually, but you've got that, I don't know what you call it. It's a software that checks the nerves, to see how they're doing, if they're impinged upon. And you get to show people through an incredibly gentle tool. I mean, it's so gentle, it's like a breath of air, just puff of air, that runs up and down the neck, and it records and shows what parts of your neck are still impinging on certain nerves. So how has that impacted your ability to really understand what's happening to that person in any particular moment?
Oh man, invaluable. I mean, really, that tool that you're talking about is the cornerstone of our ability to measure how the nervous system is functioning. Without that tool, it is really guess and check, because from day to day we can make the adjustments that we make to each person, because we check the posture first to see what we need to make changes to. If things are in place or out of place, is your head on straight or is it on crooked, right? That's why I love to tell people. And they always laugh at that, because they're like, oh, my head's on crooked. Like, oh, my wife, she'd be really relieved to hear that finally from somebody of authority. But it's true, right? So when we take a look at the posture, you can look in the mirror and you can see, gosh, my head is like really not on straight. And that is a physical manifestation of that very top bone, the atlas bone, not being in alignment. So when we make the correction to that top bone and we get that back into place, what we see right away is that the head will actually level out all on its own. It'll go from this to this in real time, right after the adjustment. And the next layer on top of that is, how much is that changing the nervous system and the neurology? Because for most people, that is good enough. But there's probably about maybe 10% of the population that we've worked with in our office where their head will balance out, the hips will balance out. And yet when we scan them with that tool, the nervous system is still not functioning properly. And so that's why I think it's an amazing tool to have, because when we have that 10% of people, it gives me the ability to say, okay, is there something we're missing here? Or is it just taking extra time? It gives us more confidence in the ability to look at and see, okay, is there any part of the neurology that's changing? And if it is, that's a really good sign, because we don't want this pattern of dysfunction to stay stuck within the body, right? We want the body to change and heal and move past that. And having a healthy functioning nervous system is the foundation of that process. So if the nervous system is staying stuck, and the scanner that we use, if it's showing that it's still stuck, what do we need to look at? What do we need to reassess? That even though these things are balancing out for this person, there is still an area or areas in the body that have interference within them. And most likely that is actually a primary area that we're missing. And so it gives us the ability to really hold ourselves accountable. And I think it's actually really interesting, Jenny, because that tool, the first iteration of that tool was, do you want to take a guess at when it was developed?
The first iteration? 1950.
First
I'm just
iteration.
take a stab. 1950. I have no idea.
Yeah, even before that, like 20 years before, 1935.
Wow.
Yeah, a long time ago, it's been in the profession. And when it was created, it really divided the profession, because the creator of it, who was the developer of chiropractic, he said, if you're not using this instrument, you essentially can't be practicing proper chiropractic. And that really pissed a lot of people off, because they're like, dude, like, I've been getting great changes. What are you talking about? And it really divided the profession. So now fast forward to 2024, and it's essentially the same tool, but now it's digital, and it allows us to understand what's happening within and see how the nervous system's functioning. And with that, we're capable of educating people, yes, but also having the confidence and the ability to say, I know that what we're doing is getting you to where you want to be. And without that tool, I don't believe I could say that 100%. And that's really why I love it, because one, diagnostically, um, we can show that person who we just scanned what their nervous system looks like and where it's working, where it's not working. And then over time, you just start to see it get better. And that's honestly the still just mind blows me whenever I see that, because it's like, wow, this stuff is really cool. I just get to geek out about it with them.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you can see the progression from scan to scan, and you can see the nervous system healing. And I mean, and just this last week, we purchased an infant scanner. So that'll be
Oh,
coming into the office,
that's
and
fantastic.
it's teeny tiny,
Yeah.
compared to the one that we use on adults.
Yeah.
But for, for newborns, for moms that are, wanting to see how their kids are functioning, I mean, that's going to be just so fantastic to be able to use that and to show them.
That's awesome. Can't wait to see that tool. Well, I have a couple more questions, and one of them is about stress, because I know that stress impacts the body. And people, I think, sometimes think of chiropractic as physical only. Oops, I had an accident, I fell, or whatever that might be. But can you talk about the fact that all different, first of all, name the kinds of stress that could impact us, and just what you're seeing in people in terms of maybe they don't understand why they feel bad or something emotionally, and how that kind of stress can impact the spine as well.
Yeah, so there's really, three kinds of stress. There's physical stress, chemical stress, and emotional stress, which is usually, I mean, people think about physical, just like you said, and miss chemical and emotional. Chemical stress is really, anything we're putting into our body that our body has to put extra energy towards eliminating. So that can be foods with chemicals on them. It can be drugs. It can be water. It can be pollutants in air. Pretty much, anything that goes into the body. Creams that you rub on your skin. And so that's one type of stress. Basically, you're putting your body under a load that it has to now exert extra energy towards handling and dealing with to maintain homeostasis. Homeostasis is our body's ability to just regulate itself. And emotional stress, which I mean, really is the most perpetual stress that we're under. And as humans, we really do not have our work cut out for us, because it's so easy. You can sit here and think about a memory that you had 10 years ago, something that happened to you, and it can make you angry, right? If you haven't let it go, it can make you sad. You can elicit emotions from memory. And that's, I mean, people know about that. That's a common thing that we know, right? You can think about mom, passing away, and that makes you really sad. And so when you have that thought occur, and then you have an emotional response occur because of that thought, your body is actually activating certain neurological pathways that release chemicals and hormones that create that feeling of sadness within you. Okay. And so you take that same principle and you just let it run rampant with all of these terrible thoughts, that you can have. Say you're running a business, say you're running 5 businesses, you know, imagine the stress that comes along with that. Gosh, am I going to be able to make payroll this month? Am I going to be able to reach enough people? Am I going to be able to make enough money? Am I going to be able to serve enough people? Right? All these thoughts are coming in all the time, and they're releasing chemicals and hormones and stresses in the body that the body has to deal with. And so the more energy that the body puts towards trying to, you know, break down those chemicals and hormones that are putting you in a state of stress and fight or flight, which is a part of the nervous system that really changes the way that our body expresses, the way that we move and think, and it turns off our centers of thought, and it turns on our muscles to be able to like run away from things. And so it really just, dumbs us down in a way. And that's where most people are. And so it's interesting, that you bring that up too, because when the nervous system has interference within it, that's usually where people are stuck. They're
Mm.
stuck in there's two states of being. You're stuck in either fight or flight or rest and digest. And it's called sympathetic or parasympathetic. Those are the two terms. So when there's interference in the nervous system, the body, it should be going in and out of those states of being effortlessly, right? It should be able to go into fight or flight when there is a lion in front of you, but then you run away from that lion, and you should be able to dip back down into rest and digest and come back into a normal state of being where your body's not under stress. But when there is interference in the nervous system, it's not regulating properly. It's like your body puts its foot on the gas and it holds down the pedal, and people can get stuck there. And so their body is on overdrive essentially, and it's working hard. And so, in 2024, we've come up with these terms like burnout, right? Or overload, or all of these terms that are really popular with like high performance people that are go, 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 go until their body gives out. And it's not because, they're go, go, go. It's because their body is not capable of sustaining the state of being that they're in, and they're not transitioning back into homeostasis. So for every person, that is stuck like that, I'll give you an example of somebody who's not stuck like that, right? Who's taking care of their nervous system and is capable of moving in and out of those states of being because they're working on their body's ability to adapt to stress. And that's really what it comes down to. Because when the nervous system is adaptable, we can adapt to that stress. When there's stress, say physical stress, the reason that our body is able to say you get hit by a car, right? Your nervous system knows that you're getting hit by a car. And so it makes certain changes internally to try and adapt as best as it can to that physical stress. The same thing happens to chemical stress. The same thing happens to emotional stress. And when it's not capable of making those changes, that's when you get stuck in that certain state of being. That's why the body starts to break down from the inside, because it's not able to heal properly. And so when that happens, when we get stuck there and the body isn't capable of making those changes, ultimately, the part that's necessary to start to understand is that if we can't, and I'm gonna frame this in like a really simple way. If we can't make the body more adaptable, if we can't allow the nervous system to do its job, then you're not going to get what you want out of your body. There's going to be certain things that can't keep up, start to break down. And that's what we're seeing a lot of right now is these problems that are occurring because of physical stress, chemical stress, emotional stress, interfering with the nervous system. And instead of people being adaptable to it, it's overloading. It's like you fill up your cup with water and the water just overflows, and people are thinking, I just want to add more water and I want to be able to take on more and I want to be able to do more. And like, how come I can't do this? My body's not keeping up with me. And it's like, yeah, but dude, you gotta like empty the cup out. Like, what are you doing for that? And it's like, oh, nothing, I don't have, my cup's been overflowing for so long that like, I can't even put enough paper towels down to catch the water, And what does that look like? Well, that looks like, being put on medication because now your thyroid is burning out and your metabolism is tanked. It looks like your anxiety has gotten so bad that, I can't go be in in-person meetings because my body just freaks out. And it looks like depression in teenagers. It looks like heart problems in 45-year-old males who are healthy, right? But those problems, they build, and it doesn't matter what the symptoms are. The symptoms are a sign that the body is not healing as it should, because when it does heal the way it's designed to, those problems, they don't occur, and they don't occur as quickly because we're working and we're dumping out our cup regularly. It's not filling up with water. So when we look at stress in that way, it starts to make a lot of sense, and the picture starts to come together of like, okay, these are the things, these are the tools that I have. How often do I need to use these tools to get my body to do really what I want it to do? Because everybody's goals are different, right? Not everybody wants to go, be Tony Robbins. Not everybody wants to go hike Mount Everest. Not everybody wants to go, push their body. Some people want to be a good dad. Some people want to be a good mom. Some people want to be a really good teacher. And it doesn't matter exactly what your goal is. The X factor is going to be, how am I allowing the nervous system to process the stress that I'm under? Because it doesn't matter what stress you're under. If you're under stress and it's not being assimilated properly, it's not being, removed properly from the body, then it's going to continue to build up. And that's when things break down. And that's usually when people turn to drug, surgery, and medication. And that's, unfortunately, where most of the people in our country are right now.
Right.
I've been
You're
given some really
absolutely
long
right.
answers to your really simple questions.
Well, everything you said was really important, though, because it's not just a little superficial, sound bite that we need. We needed more in depth, and we need to have this kind of information so that people can think for themselves about it and be informed so they can make real choices for themselves. So thank you for that. And I have one last question for you, which is what else, if anything, can you think of that you'd like to share with the audience today before we wrap up?
Oh, I think we've covered a lot of really good stuff.
Yeah.
The things that, are most important to me are that, wherever you are in the country, finding a good chiropractor that's going to be able to check the spine for any sort of interference within the nervous system is absolutely key, no matter what you want to achieve in life. And it is necessary. It's key because that is what is going to allow you to be you. And without that, there is interference in your life because there's interference within the nervous system. And that really sucks. And I don't think anybody really wants that.
Right.
So, what I would encourage people to do is, reach out to me, reach out to Jenny if you need a recommendation on somebody good for you or for your family. And let's get you guys connected. Let's get you hooked up and let's get the power turned on. Because when we start making those changes from the inside out, it's I can't even tell you just the amount of change that people go through in our office, in their personality, in their
Mm.
personal life, who they are as a father, who they are as, just as, whatever they choose to do, it just changes. And that's really the most beautiful thing that I've seen in my work is allowing the human body to get back to normal, allowing that person to get back to normal, to be able to live the way that they were designed to live, because they are now in balance with the principle, which is that our body's intelligent. And when there's interference to that intelligence, there is something besides perfection. And I don't think that anybody deserves that.
Exactly. And speaking of different chiropractors and practitioners around the country, I'm glad you said that because you are located, your center in Olympia, Washington. And so if anybody does have any questions about that, there are people around the country that can assist. So thank you for saying that. And thank you for being with us. I really appreciated your time. And we look forward to seeing you again sometime. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.